Voting electronically, that is, voting online via the internet, has been on the rise in municipal elections in Ontario for the last decade. In the elections to be held on October 22nd, some municipalities are only offering the e-voting option. Joining us now to consider what's at stake in such a shift, Nicole Goodman, Assistant Professor of Political Science at Brock University in St. Catharines and Director of the Centre for E-Democracy at the Munk School of Global Affairs at U of T, and Alexander Essex. He's Assistant Professor of Software Engineering, specializing in election cybersecurity at Western University in London, Ontario. And it's great to have you two here with us on TVO tonight. We want to show a couple of graphics just to get people a bit up to speed on what we're talking about here. Sheldon, if you would, the first graphic, please, which takes a look at Ontario municipalities offering online voting over the past decade and a half. And as we can see, 15 years ago, very, very few. And now it's about half. There's 444 municipalities in Ontario, so we got almost half of them that are offering some kind of online voting. And if you flip to the next chart as well, some offer only online, and then you can see the difference between online and paper balloting. Of the 194 municipalities that will offer internet voting, 37 of them, 19%, will also still offer the traditional paper balloting. This is all information according to IntelliVote, the largest vendor of internet voting in Ontario. All right, you see all of these numbers happening. Nicole, what's your reaction?
Yeah, I mean, there's been tremendous growth. So in 2003, there were 12 municipalities that trialed online voting. Markham was the largest, and there was 11 smaller municipalities. And since then, with each election cycle, usership has almost doubled. Municipalities have found success with online voting in terms of increased accessibility, convenience, satisfaction among electors, and turnout.
What's your view of the way that arrow is going, Alex?
It looks like the next election cycle will have 100% saturation in online voting. And as a computer security technologist, I'm concerned, and other colleagues like me internationally are concerned about this trend.
What's your concern?
Well, we have a lot of concerns, but it really comes down to the idea of how you prove that an election really was counted up the way that it was intended. This is the thing that we have a really great standard for this with paper ballots. I can watch the ballots, the paper going into a box at the end of the night. I can watch them poured out. All of the candidates' representatives, the scrutineers can watch it counted up.
You have the proof.
Yeah, nothing up my sleeve. And so in the online version of this, what's the analog to watching the paper counted up? So this is the question.
I will confess to you, I shouldn't do any confessing on this program, but I will confess to you that when I have voted in the past and I've made the little mark on the ballot and then I watch the paper go into the machine and I see on the tally, the light goes off and it says that it has been counted, there is a small skeptical part of me that wonders, now, did that really get counted? Because I can't really see that it did. So how do you deal with that kind of skepticism?
Yeah, so well, you raised a good point there. So you mentioned that you cast a paper ballot, but it went through an electronic voting machine.
A reader.
Yes, a reader. So there is a difference between tabulation, like electronic tabulation, and online voting.
What's the difference?
So online voting is casting a ballot and having it being counted via the internet, except actually in the US, there are hybrid models used for military overseas whereby they receive their ballot electronically via email, print it off, mark it, and then put it in the good old mail. That would give you a paper record. But tabulators don't use the internet. They're just machines.
So they can't be hacked, in fact.
Well, there can be problems with tabulators, like the George Bush election. I'm sure Alex could speak to some issues with tabulators, but they are very different. So I just want to make that clear.
And you're talking, but where you are bullish is on the growth in internet-based balloting?
Yes, and particularly remote online voting, because there's different types of online voting. So you could vote from a polling place, right? You could go and vote by a polling place. You could vote at a kiosk. Kiosk online voting takes place in malls, community centers, libraries, city halls, for example. It's a place that's not your home, but it's also not a traditional polling station. So the goal there is it increases accessibility for electors, but there's still some control among election officials. Remote voting offers the greatest potential convenience for electors, but the least control for election officials, and I think that's where the issues come.
Now, I gather, Alex, that Guelph tried online voting in 2014, but it's not going to use it again this time. How come?
Well, the council voted to not pursue online voting in this election cycle. So,
because why?
I can't speak on behalf of the council and their decision, but I was asked by local residents to come and speak on their behalf. They were concerned about the security side of things. They were articulating some of these concerns. I thought they were doing a good job of it, but they felt like council wasn't really listening to them. And so they asked me to come and speak on their behalf, and I did. And some other computer security technologists were there as well.
Apparently, whatever you told Guelph was useful to them because they canceled it.
It's difficult to say because they had already voted the same way in their previous committee to step away from online voting. So when they actually did the final vote, everything was exactly the same. So at best, we just didn't. We helped people not change their minds, but it was a close decision. It was one vote margin.
Now, you mentioned Markham a few moments ago. Markham, I guess, is the biggest city in Ontario that employs this kind of online voting?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, and what did Markham see that made them decide, we're happy with this, it's safe, our people like it, we're going to keep doing this?
Yeah, so I mean, Markham started a really robust program in terms of consulting with voters and seeing how they felt about it. So right in 2003, they partnered with a company, Delvinia, in Toronto, and they started surveying this, and they found high satisfaction. So in 2003, when they introduced it, they offered it in advance polls only, and turnout went up, Steve, 300% in the advance polls. Then in 2006, when they used it again, it went up a further 43%. In 2010, there was no change, but it transformed advance voting in Markham. So before they had maybe 1,000 something voters, and now they were regularly getting 10,000 voters in the advance poll. And this time around, Markham's trying out something a little bit different, and they'll be offering online voting for the full election. So not just the advance poll, but up until and including Election Day.
So if you believe in increased citizen engagement, you got to like what you're seeing out of Markham.
Yes.
Do you have any reason to expect that now that they're going to do it not just for the advance poll, but for everything, that we'll see similarly larger numbers of participation?
Yes. So, I mean, in some of my research that I carried out with my colleague, Dr. Leah Stokes at the University of California, Santa Barbara, we looked at whether it affects turnout. We looked at different, what encourages people to participate, and we find that there's greater uptake when it's offered for the full election.
People may notice your first name is spelled somewhat differently for most people who spell Alexander. There's a K in there instead of an X.
Yeah.
And the K is in there because your background is Estonian.
Well, my grandmother was Estonian, and so it was in her honor. And
I only raise that not to tease you about it or anything like that, but because Estonia is considered one of the places in the world that has really dived into this.
That's right.
How so?
Well, they had the first online election for a national election in, I think it was 2006. And they have continued to develop their technology. And, Estonia had a tough time sort of in the 20th century. So as my grandmother would say, I'm just so happy that they're out there and they're voting. And they're very proud of their technology and their achievements in civil and e-democracy. So, I think that's a positive thing. But we still have these security concerns related to their system as well. It's not a clear-cut thing.
I'll read a little bit more here about how it went for Estonia in the 2005 election, actually, and this is from a BBC article. Since Estonia's I-voting, that's what they call it, I-voting began in 2005, there have been no serious security issues, according to this report. A crucial part of Estonia's system is that online voting is linked to the country's state-of-the-art electronic identity cards carried by every citizen and resident. Digital ID cards allow for the secure authentication of the owner online and enables a digital signature to be linked to the account. Newer cards include an electronic copy of the owner's fingerprints. Nicole, I mean, is this, there's going to be a lot of concern about people going to this much, this kind of what some would say is an intrusive form of ID. Does this prevent us from really embracing I-voting as much as you'd like us to?
Yeah, so I mean, Estonia has a terrific system. It works really well there. One of the reasons why Estonia has been successful is because they have been trialing the technology for so many years. It's the same with Switzerland. Their approach may not work in a country like Canada, where we have 32 times the population.
I mean, Estonia's got the same population, I think, maybe as Toronto.
Yes,
So
yeah. Yeah, so a bit of opportunity to grow there. But I think the lesson that we can take away from countries such as Estonia and Switzerland is that they started with pilots and they really put a lot of research in. If we were to see online voting, for example, at higher levels of government in Canada, we would really want to see them investing in research, working with people like Alex now rather than just jumping into it.
If we had digital ID cards in Canada, would you be any more sanguine about going to iVoting?
Yeah, I mean, it's better than the alternative, which is nothing. But there's two things about the Estonian national identity cards. One is that it proves your identity to the government. Okay, so fine. There's maybe a ballot secrecy issue, a conversation to have there. But what it doesn't do, at least not by itself, is prove that the vote was counted correctly. So it proves from the citizen to the government, but it doesn't prove from the government to the citizens. The other aspect of this is that occasionally you have vulnerabilities. Cryptography is notoriously difficult to implement correctly. And in fact, last year, there was a major vulnerability discovered in the Estonian PKI. The cards were actually generating the secrets to make these digital signatures in a way that allowed researchers to demonstrate the recovery of these keys. So imagine that I could cast a ballot on your behalf and then actually create a digital signature on your behalf. So they had to overhaul their whole PKI to update it.
PKI stands for?
Public Key Infrastructure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just clarify this for us as well. If you have a digital ID card, smart card, and the government presumably gave it to you, if you use that card to vote, does the government know who you voted for?
Well, so you have to distinguish between they have the ability to recover that information between what they say, which is, well, we don't look.
Got it. And do we believe that? They don't look?
Should you have to believe it?
That's another good question. Nicole, myths about online voting. We have heard a lot of criticisms.
Yeah.
What's true, what's false?
Okay, a lot of people adopt online voting thinking that it's going to encourage young people to participate.
Not the case.
I'm sorry to say that is not the case. No, young people actually prefer to vote by paper ballot. Not to say like no young people would vote online, but they prefer paper ballots.
Actually, can I say something terrible?
Yes.
Young people prefer not to vote at all.
Yes.
I think that is unfortunately the truth.
Yes.
The majority don't vote.
It is, but if they do vote, they
Yes.
prefer a paper ballot. And that is because most of them are voting for either the first time or one of the early times in their voting career, and it's symbolic for them. It's a rite of passage. So that's myth one, debunked. Myth number two is that older voters or older electors will not use online voting. Not true. They are actually the predominant users of online voting. The average age of an online voter in Ontario is 53 compared to 44 years for a paper voter.
We actually have this. Let's go ahead. Let's bring this graphic up, Sheldon. Who votes online? Here is your average internet voter. 53 years old, as Nicole just said, 55 to 65 is the most common age group, has some university education in their background, has an annual household income between $80,000 to $99,000 a year, so certainly on the higher end of the income scale, is married, lives in the suburbs, and is a frequent voter. So you're right, not young people, and that's kind of surprising because we're led to believe that young people are so tech savvy that they would love this.
Yes, yes. But on the other hand, a lot of municipalities and governments in general were sort of wary about adopting technology, thinking that it would only appeal to young people and not older voters. So we can see that that's actually a myth. And then one other myth is a lot of people say that online voting doesn't increase turnout. And based on a study that I carried out with Leah of municipal elections, we find that it does increase turnout. In fact, by 3.5 percentage points. And if voting by mail was not in place beforehand, which is another convenience voting method, turnout increase was double that. So this is really significant, Steve, because although it is at the local level, so we can't make judgments about higher levels of government, but when we change an SMP electoral system, for example, to a more proportional one, the literature shows that's about a 5% increase or decrease in turnout, depending on the way that you're going.
What was that an acronym you just used?
Oh, sorry, single member plurality, or our first past the post electoral system. So if you change a proportional system to a plurality system to a proportional system, you see about a 5% increase. If you implement compulsory voting, the increase is anywhere from 7 to 14%, depending on the jurisdiction. So why this is so significant is because online voting could be a much smaller change in voting rules that could deliver much larger payoffs for governments in terms of turnout increase.
Alex, given how few people vote at the moment, and particularly we're coming up to a municipal election turnout often, you correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's 25 to 30% or something. It's really not great. If you could bump that by 5, 10, 15% by introducing iVoting, would that be worth doing in your view?
Well, yes, but it depends on the cost, right? So if there's a hidden cost to this, which is that in the long term, we don't have as much confidence in the outcome as we had in the paper ballot method, then in the long term, that's maybe not a good trade. There's a lot of talk about the notwithstanding clause, and so I went back to look at some Supreme Court decisions to prepare, and the Supreme Court says the democratic process is a cornerstone of our society, and it flows from the confidence that we have in the machinery, in the process. So the system gets legitimacy from the confidence in the process. So we need to be able to have that confidence. And so if we move to a system that doesn't have that same transparency, then in the long term, how do we maintain that level of confidence?
Let me pick up on another one of Nicole's comments in terms of when you introduce internet voting, who votes? Might the composition of the electorate be affected if councils decide to introduce iVoting or not to have it?
Well, I think that Nicole might be the best person to answer this question because she's done research into this notion of what digital technology can do towards disenfranchising individuals. But I would say that if you look at the United States and the legal wrangling that they have with voter ID laws, simply allowing something as seemingly simple as requiring a ID at the polling place has the effect, or at least the perceived effect, of disenfranchising groups of people. So now we make, in these cities that have only online voting, we make it a condition that you have to have an internet-facing computer. I mean, I have relatives that have never owned a computer, never will. How do they vote?
They'd be disenfranchised if you had only internet voting. Possibly.
Yeah.
Okay, you want to speak to some of this?
Yeah, if I can speak to equality and inclusiveness with voting. So a couple points. One is when we introduce online voting as a complementary method, this means alongside paper voting, we see benefits in terms of increasing the inclusiveness of the electoral process. So one, it increases the accessibility for special groups of electors that face additional barriers when voting, such as persons who belong to Indigenous communities, elderly people who have mobility issues, students who are away at school, busy families, military or other persons living overseas, those types of people. So we can see it improve voting for them, especially also persons with disabilities. With special SIP and PUF applicators, they can actually vote unassisted for the first time, making voting more equal. On the other hand, when you're eliminating paper voting and offering an only online or electronic election, so a lot of municipalities will offer a hybrid, they'll offer online and telephone voting together. Yes, that could certainly change the composition of the voting population, and some of the research that I carried out with colleagues shows that, or we suggest that perhaps some people are being digitally disenfranchised on this basis.
Who, for example?
People with lower digital literacy skills and access. And we're carrying out, along with Mike McGregor from Ryerson and Zach Spicer from U of T, we're carrying out a project this fall called the Electronic Elections Project. It's sponsored by SSHRC. And we hope to answer 3 questions in this project. One is, what happens when you take paper voting away with respect to voter turnout? How do things change? 2, how does it affect the composition of the voting population, and by that affect potentially electoral outcomes? And then the 3rd question looks at public attitudes. So when we take paper voting away, does that perhaps give you more negative attitudes towards political actors and institutions?
You did mention the notwithstanding clause a second ago, which does seem to be a bit in the news these days. It's all part of the charter, of course. Given the potential disenfranchisement Nicole just mentioned, is there a potential charter challenge here around any of this?
Well, remember, the whole reason why we're in this whole mess to begin with is because the government decided that they were going to change the ground rules of an election during the election. The province did, yes. With online voting going to a model where you can only cast your vote online, there are potentially groups that will be disenfranchised by that. But the other side of the coin relates to the candidates and how we can assure people that their votes counted, and that the candidates who lost, that they really lost. We already saw the specter of this raised during the PC leadership race, for example, which was done in an online voting system. So when it looked like,
just to clarify, this was the one where Doug Ford beat Christine Elliott.
That's right.
Caroline Mulrooney.
So
Tanya
his campaign raised the specter of challenging the legitimacy of the online vote because of technical issues and so forth. So this is the risk that we're running by experimenting with this particular technology. But you can go deeper than that and just say, well, what is the evidence that we're provided? I mean, I have people contacting me from all around the province. I had a member of a candidate for one of the council races contact me just this morning and said, was able to articulate this issue, which is, how do we know that our votes are counted up correctly? What is the burden? The burden of proof is that that the government has to provide evidence. And what we see with the online voting systems is something similar to taking the ballot box into a room, and we don't know who's in the room, and they come out with a number. So,
well, let me jump in there for a second. Nicole, what can you say to Alex to allay those concerns that he has?
Well, I think Alex's concerns are important, and I'm really glad that you're having us both on today to sort of debate this, because this debate that we're having gets at the core debate of online voting that's been happening for 20 years, and that is accessibility and turnout on the one hand, and security on the other. And the reality is that both of these things need to be balanced. We need to make sure that we are maintaining electoral integrity, and so one of the things maybe we'll get to is Alex and I both advocate for putting in guidelines or standards that municipalities could follow to enhance their technical knowledge and give them a better ability to vet vendors, and also ensure that we're holding things to a higher standard. On the other hand, if the provincial government were to take away the ability for municipalities to do this, they could be really affecting turnout. As society changes and we increasingly, adopt technology, it may be less of a question, do we need online voting to encourage people to vote, or do we need online voting to keep people voting, to retain current voters?
Because if we don't offer that as an option,
turnout could continue to fall. Yes.
That is a concern, wouldn't you agree? We do have to do something to, I shouldn't say it, I should ask it. Do we not have to do something to ensure that turnout doesn't continue to fall to alarmingly low levels?
Well, again, it comes down to this question of at what cost. So if you were to imagine a situation where there was a magic box that just produces a result, and then we have to form a government based on what that magic box said, that's not giving us the confidence that the Supreme Court says that we need to have in the institution. So we really have to look at what it is that we're trading off for the adoption of the technology. We don't have to take on new technology. People seem to view paper ballot voting as kind of simple in the sort of naive way, when in fact it's simple in the elegant way, the design elegance format. So there's this counter-argument that says, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Should the provincial government pass a law saying, until we are 100% sure of the integrity of an e-voting or i-voting system, we're not going to allow municipalities to do it anymore?
Well, let me tell you about the Municipal Elections Act. In the section about alternative methods, it doesn't even name online voting. It names telephone voting and vote by mail. But the act was written in the Windows 95 era, right? Online voting hadn't happened yet anywhere, as far as I can tell. So at the time, they weren't really thinking about this. This was before September 11th, before Florida 2000, before HAVA and the American Election Assistance Commission and Hacking Democracy and all of these big bang events that have shaped our understanding of elections and cybersecurity.
Would you be prepared to see that kind of a law passed until every I was dotted and T crossed to people's satisfaction?
Well, I would say to you, Steve, look at what's happening right now when the province is trying to dip their hands into municipal business. So I take Alex's point. However, I favor the language of alternative voting for a few reasons. Elections Ontario did a report in 2011 when they were considering online voting, and I think it's called alternative voting technologies, actually. So that language has been carried and is relatively current. But I think it's important because municipalities, sure, they're creatures of the province, but they should have relative autonomy to be able to, carry out elections as they see fit. And it's important to remember that there is vast variance in terms of the characteristics of municipalities, their resources, their geography. So what works in one may not work in another. So I think keeping that language of alternative voting is important because it can encompass so many different voting methods and allows them to sort of pick and choose. If I can just mention one other quick thing. With respect to digital disenfranchisement, I did want to mention that municipalities that are adopting online voting and going all the way fully electronic elections, they are taking measures to improve accessibility. They're going door to door with iPads. They're in retirement homes, for example. They have buses. Sudbury had a bus that in the last election that circled the city. And so they are taking measures to improve accessibility.
Gotcha. Good debate. We'll see where it all lands. It won't on October 22nd, but it may as the years unfold. Nicole Goodman from Brock University, Alexander Essex from Western University. Good of both of you to come into TVO tonight. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
The Agenda with Steve Bacon is brought to you by the Chartered Professional Accountants of Ontario, helping businesses stay on the right side of change with strategic thinking, insightful decisions, and business leadership. Are you on the right side of change? Ask an Ontario CPA.